The morning light crept in like it always did, brushing over the sheets, the empty pillow beside her, the hollow silence pressing against her ribs. She didn't move at first. Her eyes opened slowly, not from rest but instinct, like something inside her already knew. She reached out. Nothing. The bed was cold. Her hand searched the space he always filled, but there was no warmth, no breath, no trace of him. Just a dent in the mattress that mocked her. She sat up. The air in the room was still, almost too still, like the moment right before a storm breaks the sky. Her heart beat a little faster. Maybe he was in the kitchen. Maybe he'd gone for a walk. Maybe. The screen of her phone blinked. One message. She stared at it. It's not you. It's me. I need space. No punctuation. No name. Just that. It didn't make sense. This had to be a joke, a prank, a mistake. She stared at the message again, rereading each word as if they might rearrange themselves into something less final, less sharp. But they didn't. She called his name. Quietly at first, then louder. No answer. No echo of movement. Just silence. Her voice sounded strange in the emptiness. She climbed out of bed, checked the closet. A few things were missing. Not everything. Not enough to scream I'm leaving forever. Just enough to say I won't be back soon. The bathroom counter still held his toothbrush. His jacket still hung on the hook. But his keys were gone. So was his wallet. His shoes. Her chest tightened. No fight. No warning. No explanation beyond a message short enough to fit on a post-it note. She tried calling him. Straight to voicemail. She texted? No response. The minutes crawled by. She stood in the center of the living room, phone in one hand, heart unraveling in the other. The silence grew heavier. Her mind raced. What did she do wrong? Was it something she said? Something she didn't see? Everything started to blur. Days, weeks, even months of moments she had brushed aside. The canceled dinners. The way he stopped asking how her day was. How he always looked tired but never talked about why. And the way he had started saying, I'm just tired, as a full stop. No room for conversation. No room for her. She had noticed. Of course she had. But love has this way of making you hold your breath longer than you should, hoping it's just a passing wave. Hoping they'll come back to shore. But he didn't. She slumped into the chair by the window and stared out, dawn stretching its gold fingers across the sky while her world shrank inside her chest. All she had now was a message. Just 10 words. It's not you. It's me. I need space. It sounded like a cliché. The kind of line people use when they want to make a clean escape. But he wasn't that kind of person, was he? Or maybe she didn't know who he really was. Maybe she only knew the version he let her see. She tried to breathe. Tried to ground herself. But her mind was unraveling, each thread pulling memories she didn't ask for. Him laughing in the kitchen, his hand in hers on the walk home, the way he used to whisper, "Don't ever leave me." Now he was gone. And she was still here, alone in the silence. She looked down at her phone again. Pressed the screen. Still no new messages. No missed calls. Nothing to explain why her life had just been torn in two without warning. She thought of calling someone, her sister, her friend, anyone, but what would she even say? He left. He sent a text. That's all I know. She sat there for hours, unmoving. Numb. A part of her waiting for the door to open, for this all to be a terrible misunderstanding. But deep down, something told her the truth. He was gone. Not lost. Not confused. Just gone. And she didn't know if he was ever coming back. The worst part wasn't the message. It was how easily he'd vanished. How quietly. As if she didn't deserve more than 10 words. As if years of love could be severed like thread in one night. Her phone slipped from her hand, landing on the floor without a sound. She didn't cry. Not yet. Crying would have meant accepting it. Instead, she stared out the window, watching the light shift across the walls. A new day had started. And he wasn't in it. Her life had just changed. But no one else knew. The world outside went on like nothing had happened. The mailman. The neighbor walking her dog. Cars moving along the street. But inside, her world was unrecognizable. She whispered his name once more. Just once. And then silence again. The first night without him felt like walking barefoot through glass. Every room in the house carried his fingerprint. The coffee mug still stained from yesterday. The book he never finished, still lying open, like it was waiting for him to come back. She avoided the bedroom. The silence there was louder than anything. She barely slept. Just drifted in and out, her body still expecting him to pull her close in the dark, to whisper, "You okay?" when she turned in her sleep. But that voice didn't come. The space behind her stayed cold. By morning, she was tired of asking herself questions with no answers. She opened the closet again, slower this time. The missing items were more obvious now. The shoes he wore to work. The watch she got him on their anniversary. His gym bag. He'd chosen carefully what to take, just enough to avoid panic, not enough to scream finality. But it was final. She knew that now. She thought about the last few months. The late nights. The locked phone. The way he always seemed somewhere else, even when he was sitting right next to her. She'd asked once if he was okay. He said yes. She asked again a week later. He said he was just tired. After that, she stopped asking. Not because she didn't care, but because she got tired of pretending his answers made sense. He hadn't been there for a long time. Their conversations had dried up. She used to tell him everything, what her boss said, the funny meme she saw, how the neighbor's dog stole her slipper again. He used to listen. He used to laugh. Then one day he didn't. And it wasn't sudden. It was slow, like watching paint peel off the walls. One smile less. One touch less. One skipped dinner. Then another. Until the gaps between them weren't gaps, they were canyons. Still, she held on. Because love does that. It forgives too quickly. It waits too long. She remembered their anniversary dinner 6 months ago. She'd worn the dress he loved. Booked his favorite restaurant. He said he had a headache halfway through and barely touched his food. She told herself it was okay. Not every night had to be perfect. That lie was easy to swallow back then. Now it was poison in her throat. He hadn't said he was unhappy. Not once. No mention of needing time, or feeling off, or wanting help. Nothing. Just that single, ridiculous message. She thought about all the times she'd picked up his slack. Cooked dinner when he worked late. Held him after his bad days. Covered for him when he bailed on family events. She gave so much of herself that she didn't even notice how little she was getting back. It wasn't just betrayal. It was erosion. He didn't just leave, he let her fall apart while she was trying to hold them together. Her phone buzzed. Her heart jumped. Not him. Just a reminder from the dentist. She put the phone face down. She should have seen it. The signs were there. Not just in what he said, but in what he stopped saying. No more "I love you" before bed. No random texts during the day. No questions about how she felt, what she wanted, if she was happy. It wasn't just what he did. It was what he didn't do. She opened the group chat with her friends. Typed. Deleted. Typed again. Stared at the blinking cursor. Closed the app. She couldn't say it yet. Couldn't admit it out loud. Saying it made it real. She called her mother. It rang once, twice, then she hung up. She wasn't ready for pity. Not yet. Not when she didn't understand it herself. Because part of her still believed there had to be more. This couldn't just be about needing space. People don't vanish from marriages over space. She wondered if there was someone else. The thought made her stomach turn. But it wouldn't stop echoing. She remembered that weekend he said he was away for work. How vague he'd been. How he turned off his location. She'd asked why. He said it was a battery issue. Now it sounded like a lie wrapped in laziness. Her hands trembled. She opened their shared bank account. Nothing strange. Then the credit card. 2 charges that stood out: a hotel 2 cities away, a flower shop she'd never heard of. She zoomed in on the date. It wasn't their anniversary. It wasn't even close to any special occasion. She didn't cry. She just stared at the screen, the confirmation of what she already suspected. It didn't matter now. Whether it was another woman, a midlife crisis, or something darker, it didn't change what he did. He left. He didn't ask. He didn't try. He left. And that choice said more than any excuse he could ever offer. She closed her laptop. Her hands were steady now. She wasn't angry. Not yet. She was just empty. Like someone had taken everything out of her and left her skin behind. Still, somewhere deep down, beneath the shock, beneath the ache, something else began to form. Not strength. Not clarity. Just the seed of a thought. This wasn't my fault. And though she didn't believe it completely, just thinking it was enough to keep her upright. She didn't know what she was hoping to find when she opened his old laptop. He hadn't used it in months, or so she thought. The battery had died. She plugged it in, waited. The screen flickered on. There were no photos, no open tabs. Just a lingering login to an email account she didn't recognize. The name was close enough to his, but not the one she knew. A second identity. The inbox was quiet, until she started scrolling. Subscription confirmations, forums, discussion threads about recovery, shame, isolation. She clicked on one thread. The title read, "How do you tell the person you love that you're broken?" It wasn't about infidelity. It was about addiction. The messages weren't long. But they were raw. He'd written about spiraling, lying, hiding. There were references to drinking, to gambling, to something he called his darkness. One post stood out. "I want to protect her from me. I don't want to ruin the best thing that ever happened to me." The screen blurred. She hadn't ruined him. He hadn't left because of her. He left because he was collapsing, and he thought stepping away was saving her. But he hadn't given her the choice. She should have been angry. Maybe part of her was. But it tangled with something deeper, grief. Not just for what she lost, but for what he'd carried alone. She thought back to the last time he cried. It was quiet, late at night. She'd walked in on him staring at himself in the bathroom mirror. His shoulders were shaking, but he didn't say a word. When she asked what was wrong, he just said, "I'm tired." She thought it meant stress. She didn't know it meant drowning. She remembered now how often he avoided eye contact. How loud the silence between them had become. How many lies were hidden behind a practiced smile. She closed the laptop. She didn't pity him. But she did understand now. Not enough to excuse it. But enough to stop asking the wrong questions. She checked her phone. Still nothing from him. Still no explanation, no apology. She sat in the quiet and thought about what it meant to love someone who didn't love themselves. How that kind of love can turn you inside out, make you give and give, hoping it will be enough to fix the cracks you didn't cause. It wasn't fair. He had the privilege of leaving. She was the one left behind to untangle the wreckage. The one who still had to live in the house they built together, sleep in the bed where his body used to be. She didn't know what to do with the truth. That he was hurting. That he hid it. That he ran. She thought about all the times he told her he was fine. About how easily she accepted it because she wanted to believe him. How often she traded her intuition for optimism. Love shouldn't require blindness. She opened the voicemail tab. One unread message from 2 weeks ago. Her thumb hovered before she tapped. It was his voice. Shaky. Breathless. He was crying. "I don't know how to do this anymore. I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to hurt anyone. I love you, but I can't breathe. I feel like I'm drowning and I don't know how to stop." Then silence. He didn't send that message to hurt her. He sent it because he was desperate. But still, he didn't stay. He didn't reach for her. He let her wake up in an empty bed and find closure through breadcrumbs. She'd spent days blaming herself, wondering if she'd missed the signs, if she hadn't loved hard enough. But now she knew. He didn't leave because she failed him. He left because he failed himself. And that difference mattered. It wasn't peace. Not yet. But it was the threat of it. She picked up a pen. Started writing. Not to him. To herself. You did your best. You showed up. You loved with everything you had. His pain is not your burden. His silence is not your shame. You are not broken because he is. She read the words again. They didn't feel true yet. But maybe they could, one day. She folded the paper and tucked it into her journal. She thought about reaching out to him. Just to say she knew. That she understood now. But what would that solve? It wouldn't bring him back. And maybe it shouldn't. Some people can only survive by walking away from the things they love most. And some people survive by finally choosing themselves. For years, she'd been pouring into him without noticing she was running dry. He had demons. But she had a life. And it was time to start reclaiming it. She started cleaning. Not because she cared about dust or order, but because it gave her something to do with her hands. Something that didn't involve waiting. The living room went first. Then the kitchen. Then the bedroom. Every object she touched carried a memory, but she didn't pause. She threw away the half-used shampoo he left behind. Tossed out the old hoodie she used to wear when she missed him. Cleared the drawer where he kept spare change, broken headphones, and silence. She didn't cry. Not because it didn't hurt, but because the grief had dried into something sharper. She was past the confusion. Past the shock. This was a different kind of pain, one that needed motion, not stillness. She found his journal in the back of the closet. A plain black notebook. Inside were pages torn from himself, scattered, angry, apologetic. One page stopped her cold. I don't deserve her. She'll stay, and I'll rot. I don't know how to ask for help without destroying her. She closed the book. She wasn't a savior. She was a partner. And he hadn't let her be either. She made a list. Not of chores. Not of tasks. A list of things she'd lost without realizing it. The way she used to hum while cooking, the friends she hadn't seen in months, the way she avoided mirrors lately. He didn't steal those things. She gave them up piece by piece while waiting for him to come back to her. But now she wasn't waiting anymore. She left the house for the first time since it happened. No makeup. No plan. Just movement. She walked to the park. Sat on a bench. Watched people pass, a mother pushing a stroller, a couple laughing over coffee, a man feeding birds like it was the most important thing in the world. Life kept happening. Without her. Around her. In spite of her. But for the first time, she didn't feel like she was just watching it. She felt like maybe she could step back in. She called her sister. They talked for 20 minutes. Not about him. About everything else. Books. Work. Their childhood dog. Laughter came unexpectedly. She caught herself smiling and didn't apologize for it. After the call, she walked home slower. Not because she was tired. Because she wasn't in a rush to escape her thoughts anymore. Inside, she opened her laptop. Typed a search she never thought she would: divorce lawyer near me. She didn't know if he'd ever come back. But that wasn't the point. The damage had already been done. And she wasn't going to live in limbo, waiting for someone who chose to disappear. The lawyer's voice was kind. Calm. There were questions. She answered them. Paperwork would follow. She hung up and sat still for a moment. It wasn't rage. It wasn't revenge. It was clarity. This was her line in the sand. She thought about who she used to be before she met him. Before she shrank herself to fit into his silence. She missed that woman. The one who took herself to brunch on Sundays. Who danced while folding laundry. who cried at cheesy movies and laughed too loud in public. She wanted her back. So she made another list. This one was different. It said call the therapist back, book the yoga class, say yes to dinner with Maya, donate his clothes, change the locks. She stared at the list. It didn't make her feel better. But it made her feel real. Grounded. Like she wasn't just surviving, she was beginning. That night, she sat at the table alone and ate dinner without checking her phone. No distractions. No digital ghosts. Just her and the sound of cutlery and breathing. Afterward, she wrote again. Another note to herself. You are not the reason he broke. You are the reason you survived it. It wasn't poetic. But it was honest. She didn't know where this would lead. There would be more hard days. More triggers. More mornings where the bed still felt too big. But there would also be mornings where it didn't. And that mattered. The truth didn't set her free. It scarred her. But it also gave her something else, a mirror. One that didn't lie. One that showed her the woman who stayed when he ran, who stood when everything collapsed, who chose to feel it all instead of numbing it away. She wasn't whole yet. But she was becoming. And that was enough, for now. She didn't mark the days anymore. The calendar no longer held grief like it used to. The anniversary of his disappearance passed quietly. No tears. No text from him. Just a deep breath and a longer exhale. Her mornings looked different now. No more lingering in bed waiting for silence to feel less loud. She got up. Stretched. Made coffee the way she liked it, strong, no compromise. She played music again. Not the kind they used to share, but songs that sounded like freedom, like momentum. She reconnected with Maya. Dinner turned into weekly meetups. They laughed too hard over wine, shared old stories, avoided the subject until one night Maya said, You seem lighter. She nodded. I am. She didn't need to explain. Maya saw it. Therapy helped. Not the kind with quick fixes or cliches, but the kind that peeled layers back slowly. Week by week, she rediscovered pieces of herself buried under years of making space for someone else's chaos. She learned she wasn't responsible for someone else's healing. That loving someone doesn't mean losing yourself in their darkness. She stopped defending him in her own mind. She stopped replaying moments looking for where she went wrong. It wasn't about blame anymore. It was about accountability, his, not hers. She went through the final steps of the divorce quietly. No dramatic confrontation. No closure conversation. Just paperwork, signatures, and a quiet click of the submit button. It was surreal how something that once felt impossible now felt like release. After it was done, she didn't cry. She took a walk instead. It was cloudy that day. Windy. She didn't care. She let the air hit her face, let her lungs fill without resistance. For the first time in months, she felt entirely in her own body. Present. Awake. Friends noticed the change. They said her eyes looked clearer. Her words firmer. She spoke up more. She didn't apologize for taking up space. She started journaling every night. Not to make sense of the past, but to understand her present. To write who she was now. What she wanted now. Not as a wife. Not as someone recovering. Just as herself. She wrote things like, I am no longer waiting to be chosen. I don't shrink to keep people comfortable. I am not afraid to begin again. These weren't affirmations. They were boundaries. She decluttered the house again. Not out of grief this time, but intention. She got rid of things that didn't reflect her anymore. Old decor, gifts from a life that no longer fit. She repainted the living room. Changed the curtains. Moved the furniture. She didn't ask permission. She just did it. The space felt new. Like her. People started asking if she was seeing anyone. She said no. Not because she was closed off, but because she wasn't looking to fill a space someone else had abandoned. She wasn't a vacancy. She was a home, even if only for herself right now. She went on one date. It was fine. The man was kind. They had good conversation. But she didn't feel that old spark. And that was okay. Because she wasn't chasing validation anymore. She didn't need to be wanted to feel worthy. She was learning to like her own company again. There were still quiet nights that felt too long. Still moments where a familiar smell or song brought a lump to her throat. But they passed. Faster now. Less sharp. The memories lost their sting and became simply that, memories. She forgave herself for the years she stayed when things were already breaking. For the silence she tolerated. For the hope she held on to too tightly. That wasn't weakness. That was love trying its best in a losing fight. She didn't forgive him. Not because she hated him. But because forgiveness wasn't required for her healing. Understanding was enough. She could move on without letting him off the hook. She wrote one last letter she never intended to send. I hope you get the help you need. I hope you learn to stay instead of disappear. But your journey isn't mine to follow anymore. I loved you, but I love myself more now. She burned the letter in the sink. Watched it turn to ash. It didn't feel cinematic. It just felt done. She looked in the mirror later that night and recognized herself again. Not the version who bent to survive someone else's storms. But the version who stood up, took the hit, and kept walking. She wasn't waiting to be whole anymore. She already was. She didn't need a dramatic moment to mark the end. No final confrontation. No sudden realization. Healing came in fragments, quiet, consistent, undeniable. It didn't shout. It settled. She started speaking at a local support group. At first, she just listened. Sat in the back. Watched others unravel their stories, voices shaking from truths they were finally brave enough to say aloud. Then one evening, she raised her hand. And when she spoke, her voice didn't tremble. She told them about the morning he left. About the message. About the silence that followed. But she didn't dwell there. She told them what came after, the days when she couldn't breathe, the moments she doubted her worth, the hours spent unpacking not just his departure but her own disappearance in the relationship. And then she told them how she found herself again. The room was quiet when she finished. Not out of pity. Out of recognition. That kind of pain, that kind of return, it was familiar to them. And it was powerful. She didn't need their validation. But it felt good to know her story had weight, not just wounds. She started collecting small joys again. The smell of fresh coffee. Morning sun on the floor. Long walks with no destination. She invested in things she'd ignored for too long, learning to cook something new, reading novels she once thought she had no time for, saying yes to road trips with friends who reminded her who she was before heartbreak tried to rewrite her. She made peace with the fact that closure isn't always something you're given. Sometimes it's something you create. Not for them. For you. And the most radical thing she did? She stopped needing to be chosen. That lesson took time. It wasn't about avoiding love or building walls. It was about no longer outsourcing her worth to anyone else's presence or absence. She was whole on her own. Anyone who entered her life had to meet her there, not pull her back into survival. She reflected on what she wished someone had told her when it all collapsed. Not sugar-coated phrases. Not empty advice. But truth. That love should never feel like walking on eggshells. That sacrifice doesn't mean erasure. That being loyal to someone who won't fight for themselves will drain you until you have nothing left. That silence is an answer. That disappearing is a choice. That emotional chaos is not romantic, it's unsafe. And that healing isn't linear, but every step counts. She wrote those lessons down. Not just for herself, but for anyone who'd find them later. Maybe someone like her, months ago, staring at a phone at dawn, wondering why love abandoned them. She didn't regret the love she gave. But she no longer carried shame for how it ended. She understood now, not everyone has the capacity to meet you where you are. Some people will only know how to love from a distance. Some will run. And that doesn't make you unlovable. It just means they weren't capable of staying. She didn't chase anymore. Not closure. Not people. Not the past. She created new rituals. Sunday mornings for reflection. Friday nights for fun. Midweek hikes when the weather allowed. She didn't wait for someone to join her. If they came, great. If not, she went anyway. Independence stopped feeling lonely. It started feeling sacred. She redefined love. Love was no longer about saving someone. It wasn't about staying quiet to keep peace. It wasn't about fixing what someone else broke. Love, now, was mutual. Calm. Intentional. Something that didn't leave in the night or hide behind vague texts. Something that didn't ask her to sacrifice herself in exchange for crumbs of connection. She wasn't afraid to love again. But she was no longer starving for it. She tasted solitude and learned it could be nourishing, too. One morning, almost a year to the day, she woke up before sunrise. The sky was soft. The house was still. No messages on her phone. No panic in her chest. Just stillness. She didn't think of him. She thought of herself. Of how far she'd come. Of how many versions of herself she'd shed to become the woman who could stand here now, not bitter, not broken, but awake. And in that moment she smiled. Not because it all made sense, but because she had survived it. And because now, finally, she was living for herself.